introduction to audio for games, for game devs, and also beginner audio folk. And to be honest, anybody who's going to listen for 40 minutes. So, I am from Fish Line Games, the audio lead and director. We are an audio outsourced company, and we make horror game IP. Before Fishtown, I worked at Jagex on Runescape and Runescape 3, and before that I went to Habitat. So, let's see. Oh, don't mistake us for a chippy, because people look to that and you guys are chippy. So, yes, game audio is game design. A lot of people think game audio is sort of just this thing you do at the end. It's sort of just polish. Maybe, they just think it's like polish and sort of something that helps with the UX, but really it's game design, and the primary purpose is generally it's just for player influence. The same way that level design is going to influence the way a player navigates a level or a mechanic. And something that's important is that just having something as your sound in the game, for a specific object, is more important than having like an amazing sound that's irrelevant to sort of that time in the game. So, yeah, like I said, it can be confused as the last aspect in development, just polish. But yeah, it's definitely more than that, and it can definitely go a long way to legitimise a project, but it gets into almost every facet of development. And yes, game audio and music can be as simple or as complicated as it needs to be. But it really depends on sort of the genre of the game, and it really depends on the genre of the game, and I'll go into that next. So I've created this sort of spectrum of audio design importance, and this is not to be mistaken for a spectrum of how good the game's audio is. It's more sort of, if you were to take the headphones off, how much would this change the experience of your gameplay? And so right at the bottom, like I said, it's not about how good the audio is, it's about how important it is. We have sort of your one mechanic mobile games. People generally don't listen to the audio in these games. But at this point I would just say that it's kind of just, when you're designing sounds for these games, it's more for vanity. So let's just make some cool sounds. It's not really that important. The next would be old school Runescape, something like Football Manager. I am intimately familiar with old school Runescape and how much people don't listen to the sounds of these games. They put it in the second monitor, they play music, but it's iconic, the sound is iconic, so who are we to say that it's important versus it triggers nostalgia. You might see I have Geometry Dash there. Since putting that on there, I've changed my mind. I realised that the level design is based on the BPM of the music. That was a lapse in judgment. These games in the middle here, Super Smash Bros, Minecraft, GTA, like I said, it's not about how good these sounds are. The sounds of these games are amazing, but you play Minecraft without sounds, you're good to go. Like it's not the worst thing in the world. You would rather have them. They're great, and obviously Minecraft music, takes you to another place. It's amazing, but not as important as the things at the other side of the spectrum. So we have horror games. We have Baby Neil, the Zootopia, with Dundee Exploits, Alan Wake 2, Alien Isolation, and then you have your sort of competitive esports titles. And these can sort of be interchangeable. I feel like Alien Isolation's audio is a bit more important than Rocket League, something like that. But you play Rainbow Six Siege, you can't hear the guy around the corner, you just lose. But yeah, like I said, iconicness is important. These games are unbelievably iconic for their audio. You hear that little Runescape theme at the start, and everyone's just, oh! Same with Minecraft, you hear like Wet Hands or whatever C418 makes it, and you're like, it's my childhood. This is me playing Xbox 360 Minecraft, split screen, it's the best thing. But yeah, game audio is also just common sense and observation. You're telling a story of what's happening in the world, and I would say it's better to have a focus on believability, specifically with audio. I mean, it's like that for other aspects of game development, but specifically with audio, we don't really care if the sound is entirely realistic. You in our game is Zuccoplane, which I'll talk about more because it's a good vehicle for explaining these things because I'm intimately aware with how the game works. But in that game, you pick up a wrench to repair a pipe, and you'll see gameplay in a second of that. And if you pick up a wrench in real life, it's barely even going to make a sound, but you need a sound to tell the player that you've picked up the thing. You need it to be tactile, you need it to be haptic almost. You need it to feel like you've actually picked the thing up and you can sort of look away and you know you've picked up an object or you placed it or something that's happening. So hopefully this works. I don't know. I need to press the game to play. But this is just an example of some of the sounds that were in the game. I don't really think I talked about it. Zuccoplane is a horror game that we made towards the end of last year, and it's on Steam for free. It's almost at 100 reviews, so you see it on Jagex Steam. Gets about overwhelmingly positive. It's a 95, so. But yes, this is what it's in. Where is it? How do I go in? Oh. Very good. That's right, yeah.
Just play it, I'll get it.
Alright. Oh, hopefully this isn't just destroyed. What's that? There we go. Okay. Can't hear it. Well, we'll move on. Maybe you can, there's...
Maybe the laptop volume if you want to check that.
It is.
Quem essa som de voz?
Oh my. There's another one. Ah, it's the other one. Right. There we go. Okay. There we go. See, luckily, there's only one audio example in this entire video. I thought this would happen. I'm just going to skip it. Basically, you're on a train, right? I'll just play the video. You're on a train, and there's a monster trying to get you from the other side of the train. And you need to solve puzzles throughout the train before it gets through the carriages and gets to you. It's only about 15 minutes long, and it's your usual horror stuff. You can kind of imagine what. Oh, there we go. Let's play this up. Anyway, it's not really a good example, but yes, thinking inside of the screen, something that's important for audio designers and also just game developers in general delving into audio, which I assume most people here are. Some devs or creative directors or whatever. Yes. None of the stuff that you hear in that clip is in the scene. This is stuff that where audio is creating a suggestion of these objects. You hear train tracks. It's not a train. We're sitting in a 3D model environment. The tunnel is moving. The train is moving. And there is no one side. It's just bang. We're shaking the screen. We're making some banging sounds in that direction. And that's something that's important. It's going to make your world believable as thinking outside the screen. So you've got like a battlefield, and you're focusing on two characters, and these two characters are fighting. for it to be believable, you want to hear all of the other fights that are happening all across the battlefield, explosions and what have you. So, yes, very important. And sometimes more importantly. But it is important at the start of a project to come up with some rules for your project's sound design. And these can be aesthetic, technical, design / player influence, etc. These can be based on all of those things. And the reason why this is really important to set up at the start of the project is that you don't stray away from your limitations, and that will be a very powerful aspect in creating a cohesion within your project. This is something that I like to do at the start of every project. Create an audio asset list. I'm sure you do this across other disciplines, but it is good to have your basic asset list. Don't go too crazy with it, because some of the stuff really doesn't matter. You're going to get bogged in, and really don't get stuck in the admin before you start designing sounds, because then you're just going to feel like you've done a lot of work. You've just sort of thought about sounds that you're probably going to change later. You might add more, you might take away some. But this is the basic one that I use. It's great for collaborating. You send this off to, what I do is I send it off to a client, because we do audio outsource. Send it to a client, they fill it in, everything's pretty straightforward, how many variants and it's music, how long it's going to be, if it's going to loop. And I can just work with that, and for specific things, I get in touch and say, is this great? And then you have asset. Defining your asset file names is pretty important at the start, because I've got into projects that are halfway through and I'm looking at the sounds and things are called all sorts, and I don't know where to find things, and they're all in different folders. So I think planning is very important for games that are going to have a lot of sounds. If you're making a game jam game, I don't think do you want. But for a big project, please focus on planning for audio. So an audio one sheet is sort of, I think it's a term that was coined by people at Riot, the audio team at Riot working on League of Legends, and it's sort of just a one sheet of all of the aspects that are going to go into a specific character or object or environment or something like that, and you're going to have the palette, things not to include for a specific character. So, I don't know, I'm going to make up a character for League. I don't know if I've never played League, so I don't even know the characters, but say there's a character that is, I've talked to somebody before about this, but say there's a character that's like a ghost champion, and the way they died is they fell out of a building, smashing through the glass, and they fell to the ground and died. Very sad. But what I would do is I would put in here, they're not going to have, they're not going to really have like foresty sounds or like foresty things. It's going to be like ghoul, ghost, whooshes and all that kind of thing, and like glass smashing and shattering, and maybe some reverse glass sound effects and that sort of thing. So this is where you can really define your rules for specific objects and characters and that kind of thing. My notes look more like the one on the right, where I just write it in paper and I'm just like, it's not going to sound like this, it will sound like that. Maybe use specific palettes, and then you can see here on the bottom left, high-tech areas, this is going to be the things that are the most important for your character or your object or wherever it is you're designing. And yeah, I use this pretty much in every project for audio and for music. For music, it's a little bit harder to sort of define rules for music, because it's, at least in my opinion, music is a lot more iterative. Sound design is still iterative, but I feel like it's a lot harder to nail down music in the same way that it is for audio, unless you're going for a really technical view of the music. It's sort of something like a sports soundtrack or something algorithmic. I feel like, it's creative, it's a lot harder to create one of these and stick to it. You may change things, but like I said, it's still important to create these ground rules, even for music, even for technical audio, and yes, establish your rules. Next, we have tools. So, there are many tools that you can use for implementing audio, and you have Unity, Unreal, Godot, and then you have your usual suspects when it comes to audio middleware, which are Wise and Fmod. And Fmod is used, it's not really as complicated as Wise. And Wise is sort of like a big AAA thing that gets used on other AAA projects. When you're thinking about using these tools for middleware, I think it's easy to overextend and think, I'm going to use middleware, that'll make me a real sound designer. I feel like you really need to define what you need in your game and think about what is actually important. Because these things carry a lot of extra technical debt, baggage. They carry a lot of extra fees, potentially, if your game makes a shitload of money. But the sounds of the Zuko line are all implemented with Unity's built-in tools. Something that I've come across recently is Sonity, which is, I think it's a sort of a bridge between middleware and Unity's inbuilt tools. It's sort of just an extension, and it's like a one-time fee. So I'm going to be exploring that in the future, but I can't really talk about it now. Maybe good, I don't know. I know Godot just came out with a few new few new things in their API for audio, so maybe we'll get that in the future, but I'm not really messing with that much. If you really want to get some free sound libraries, every single year, company Sonos, which are an audio library company, they make a compilation of sounds from a bunch of different vendors, and every time it's GDC, they put them up on the internet, and there's literally hundreds of gigabytes where you can get these, and they all have a royalty-free license. I would just be aware, don't just grab these and put them in, because every sound designer has these sounds, and your game's going to sound like every other game. So use them as layers to layer up with different sounds and make your own thing, just new. And there's some other places to find free sounds, such as the Blip Sounds Community Sound Library, and then you have, and obviously freesound.org is the classic. Just make sure that you don't use anything from music, but I can get into that. And then there's something called Zapspoil, which I've been using for a while, which is it's like £3 a month or something, which is nothing, an epidemic for sound. And for niche sound effect libraries, there is a website / company called A Sound Effect. I don't know what to call it, that's really confusing to try and explain it, but it's straight up the sentence, A Sound Effect. I don't know why they call it that, but anyway, you can get niche libraries on there for specific things. Yes, if you don't already know a software for audio, I would just say Learn Reaper. It's really cheap. It is like 40 quid for a license that goes through 2 version cycles, which is usually like 8 years. Or you can use it for free, not commercially, just don't ship sounds that you've used in Reaper if you don't have a license. But it's very good. It's pretty much, I don't know if I want to say it's the industry standard. I'd say it is, but people still say Pro Tools is. I don't know, I would say it is. Otherwise, use what you have already used. So if you have a license to FL and you've used it for a year, just use that. Don't go trying to run something new. Every digital audio workstation or audio set software can do everything. You can get Reaper is really just the best, but you don't. But I know, so I would say you can't use anything because I don't know if anybody knows the game Choo Choo Charles. It's like a huge horror game that came out recently. It's even recently, like 2 years ago. The dude used Adobe Premiere Pro for the sounds. This is an edit software. I don't know what I was thinking. That sounds hellish, but he did it, and it's a horror game. And you know, from the spectrum of audio importance, it is important to have good audio in horror games. So what's the next thing? Yes, if you want to learn if you want to learn Reaper, Akash Takar is he was a sound designer and Hyperlight Drifter. And he has an excellent YouTube tutorial series on this. It looks like I've only watched like 5 seconds. I watched the whole thing. I definitely did watch the whole thing. Andy's got updated once, so don't start. Definitely watch this. And these are the people that you should follow if you want to know things about game audio. None of these are really that technical. They're really good digestible videos for basically anybody to watch. Marshall McGee, he worked on Just Cause 4. I don't know what he does now. Game audio analysis, that's run by a guy that works at Soundcuts down in, I don't know where it is, it's somewhere in England. Aftertouch Audio, he does a lot of kind of stuff, I don't really know. And I crashed the car, he did Hyperloop Drifter. A couple of things from the Outer Wilds, I think, or Worlds, one of them. I played one of them, I don't know which one it is. So the Hero 10 mistakes I have made and sometimes still make. So the first mistake is that people always make if they don't really have a good idea about all of this stuff at the beginner, is they do really timid sound design, and which is to say, they'll design a sound, I'm not really sure about it, they're like, does this sound good? I don't know. And then they'll bury it in mix and you can be able to hear it, and I'm like, it doesn't even matter if it's bad, as long as it fits the theme. The main purpose is to influence the player, so if the player doesn't get influenced by the sound, then what are you even doing? Why is it even there? So, yes, people mix stuff way too quiet because they don't really think it's good enough, but you're not really going to know the mistakes unless you make it loud enough to hear and for it to actually be useful in game design anyway, so yes, clean stuff up. Mistake 2, I've already kind of talked about it, but yes, using the wrong middleware for the job. If you're doing a game jam and you don't really care about learning the middleware, don't go ahead and use Wise for a platformer or something. Like, Wise is a crazy, amazing piece of software, but you're just introducing a lot of headache for stuff that you don't even need to use it. You can just use the Unity's input tools or Unreal's input tools. Unreal 5's input tools are insane now, so you may not even need middleware for the engine at all. A big mistake that I see when I jump into projects that people have kind of half done is they don't use mono and stereo properly. So mono just means that there's one channel of sound, you don't hear it in left or right. Well, you do, you hear it in both, but it's the same sound. Stereo, you may have different volumes on the stereo feed. I'm sure everybody knows what mono and stereo is. I don't really explain it well, but generally for mono sounds you want to have it in, if anything is like far away or moving about in that 3D space, you want to utilise mono sound because if it's far away you don't really get to utilise the properties of the stereo sound anyway. It's going to skew how it plays in this 3D space. But you can make some fancy stuff where, say you have a bonfire that's like over here, and when you're far away you want it to be mono. The closer you get, you can open up the stereo view so that it feels like it's coming from all over the place, because that's what happens in real life. But that's only if you really want to get fancy. You don't generally stuff that's close to you and it's like UI or something like that, stereo. If it's in the 3D space, just make it mono because it's going to be, yeah, that's how stereo views work. I'm sure I could explain that better, but I'm sure you get the gist. Volume sliders. This might be a bit hard to explain. So the way most games do volume sliders is that, well, when you play a game and you have a volume slider and you need to turn it all the way down to 5% because there's basically no difference between 20% and like 8%. That happens in a bunch of games that I play. The reason for that is that audio doesn't scale linearly, technically based on how we hear it. So if anybody's ever run into that problem, you know what I mean, where you need to turn something to like 4% and the difference is so tiny in how much you move the slider. There's a way that you can make this more akin to what life is like in terms of volume, which is apply a logarithmic curve to your values of turning audio up and down. So the slider might be 50%, but really it's actually like 20% because your perceived hearing is different from a linear scale. I'm sure that's what a lot of people said, but hopefully it meant something to some people. Sort of adjacent to the whole timid mixing, some people, I'll listen to their game and they're like, I really don't know what's the problem here, something's sticking out a lot, and their footsteps are like, you can hear every single tiny little detail in the footsteps. Footsteps is something that, in order for them to sound really real and believable, they need to be subtle. So this is the kind of thing that you may have lower in the mix. And silence, that's just sort of a pacing thing. If your game has a bunch of loud stuff happening all of the time, nothing's going to have punch, nothing's going to cut through, and nothing is going to have impact. Yes, mistake 6. So many games do this thing where you put it up and last you do it, and you're like, oh my god, how do I even get out of this software? You're hitting all F4, it's a mess. Please just get the audio in, or let me get into the settings immediately so I can turn it down. Yes, this is sort of like the thing about thinking outside of the screen. Some people will just design what's exactly on the screen and not what is happening in the world, sort of off the screen, or what could be happening, or oh, that makes sense. I already gave an example earlier, so you guys know what I mean. Yes, when you're designing sounds, it is very important to step away from your audio software because you will accrue listening fatigue if you listen for too long, and then these sounds just sound like, it's like when you say a word over and over again, it doesn't even sound like a word, you're like, what's happening? I don't even know what I'm saying right now. And so, yes, take a break, 10, 15 minutes, go outside, listen to the cars or something, I don't know. Just know the sounds that you're making. Yes, another mistake that people make is they put placeholder sounds that suck, or like they don't even, I don't know, they just put sounds in to sort of know that a sound gets triggered. Sometimes you can get attached to these sounds, or even music in your game, and you're like, oh, this is fine, and then it's not royalty free, you can't use it. So you get a composer to work on the game, and you're like, oh, this isn't quite right, it's fine, the music's fine for the game, you've just put in placeholder sounds that you've been attached to. So just if you're thinking about, triggering your sounds early in a prototype or anything like that, before you get a sound designer in, just put in beeps and like stuff that sounds completely stupid in the game, like beeps or farts or whatever you want. Just don't use placeholder sounds that you're going to get attached to. Mistake number 10 is I play so many games where the sound design is amazing, and then I hear that little and it's like a beautiful ambient loop, and I'm just like, maybe it's just some sound designer, but it just drives me mad. And I like periodically hear it like every 5 minutes. I'm like, that's where the loop is. So yes, please make sure that your loops are seamless in your ambience tracks and by extension your music. And also there's a feature in, I guess it's more of a mechanic in our game where you have a welding gun and you have a pipe that needs welded. And so when you weld the thing shut, the thing just loops forever. It's like a 3-second clip of a welding sound. And that's seamless, but some, you have those sort of looping mechanics in games. I don't know, like if you play a puzzle game and you're moving a crate and you hear like, I don't know if anybody's played the original Resident Evil, but it just goes and it's just, you can hear the loop. I don't like hearing the loop, so please put focus on this. I can tell you how to do it if you come asking later. Hope this isn't about the sound. I made a video a couple of months ago about how horror game sounds are made. It's based on the game that we made in January, and you should watch it. It's like 20 minutes long. It goes into more detail about all the technical stuff that I did. Bear in mind, most of the sounds for this game were made in about a week because it was for a game jam in October. We spent a couple of months polishing the game, adding a couple of extra sounds, and then we released it in January. So you should watch this if you care more about that game, because didn't really get to hear the example. There we go, no sound, great. Yes. So, yeah, this. Oh, that's us, Testing Games. Yeah, so this video goes into more detail about the implementation and more, it's kind of a, I guess, expansion on the things that I've talked about today. You get some tips and tricks as well that's like less high level and less anecdotal, because a lot of the things we've been saying are more anecdotal. So, like I said, yeah, this game uses built-in Unity's stuff, so it's a good example of a game where you don't really need to use middleware that much. So, go next. There we go. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them. Yes.
Yes. Is fitting out and fitting in of a track a really cheap way of looping?
Sorry?
When you're making like a soundtrack, is fitting in at the beginning then fitting out at the end a really bad way of creating a looping track?
Yes. So, I'm not going to get into this, nobody's going to understand, but yeah, that is a bad way to the reason why it's bad is because it's just going to be silence and then it'll fade back in. Well, it depends, because if you have a bed of multiple different ambient sounds where they're offset and you have like 5 different, like let's say, we're talking about ambience here, you have like 5 different ambiences at once. If there is any point where you don't hear that fade out really and subtle, then it's fine, because then you have a system that's a lot easier to maintain, but you're going to eventually need to look at that system anyway, unless you make the offsets dynamic, in which case you can't really predict where it's going to get dodgy. So I would say no, but if you have the know-how, yes, it is fine. Anything else? Yes.
What's the best audio file format?
Oh, so it depends. So basically never use MP3 unless for some reason your platform that's the only thing it supports. A lot of people make the mistake of picking MP3 for their music, but in every single MP3 file there's a piece of metadata that starts at the start of the file. That means that when you try and loop music, for example, you hear that little. You don't want that. So for music, generally the best thing to go for is Ogg Vorbis, because it has a lot of the same compression, so you get smaller files, especially if it's a longer file, and it loops seamlessly. And for sound effects, unless you have some crazy file storage limitations, then just go for WAV. And bitrate, no bitrate, sorry. Yeah, bitrate, 24-bit or 16-bit fine. Anything else?
How do you go about designing sound before you get any like concept art or animations, time sounds?
You say how do you go about making sounds?
Just for me, I find it hard to think of how is the sound going to sound before I have a concept for something.
Yeah, so well, I suppose you need an idea for something. So the first thing I would go is trying to put, seeing if whatever you're designing is rooted in fantasy or reality or whatever. So I don't know. Let me think of an example. Yeah, so in our game, Music Online, you pick up these little vials that have chemicals in them. You put a couple of chemicals together, they create a sedative to make the monster go to sleep. And so the idea for the design behind our game is that I kind of wanted it to sound a bit like those scuffed indie horror games of like 10 years ago, where they've clearly just got something at freesound.org and they've kind of mashed some sounds together. I tried to make it like that, but elevated a little bit. So I just thought that we'd probably just go ahead and record something that's vaguely close to what it sounds like. So what I did is I got like a water droplet sound, just hold some water in the cup, and then I also tapped on some porcelain. And I put these two lids together and just really that's really simple for the sounds that I would make. But yeah, so I guess it's just sticking to the rules you make at the start, and also like the audio one sheet, that's sort of defining the sort of the rules that you're going to have for specific things. So, hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if it did. Anybody else?
Hi. So I know you were talking about there around like short audio clips that you find like loop and everything.
Yeah.
So something that we normally do at Studio on that is like we would just like randomise the pitch a little bit right between them.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're like doing repeated hits or something, it sort of changes it up.
Yeah.
Do you know of like any other sort of stats you could do other than like randomising the pitch?
You could randomise volume. You could randomise a low pass or a high pass filter. Obviously not too much. You just wanted to sort of kind of change the tone of the sound, and that would shape. If you randomise a low pass or a high pass filter, which is essentially, just for anybody that doesn't know, it cuts off a couple of, like, cuts off certain middle frequencies to a point, so if, you might lose some of the bass of the sound. That's going to change the tone of the sound and make it sound like you've got multiple variations. Obviously, you can't really change the key character of the sound, but it goes a bit of a way to get you there in the first place. And you can also, right, say for example you have footsteps and you want to get crazy in detail, you might want to have different boot types on different surfaces. You might want to offset cloth foley and with different offset timings, and you might want to have, I don't know, armour or gun sounds, sort of foley rattling, and you'd have all of these sounds offset within parameters. And you could get as detailed as you like, or you can go as simple as you like and have one or two different parameters interplaying with each other for different times and delays. Anything else?
This
Last
is
question.
just kind of a random thing I was wondering, but on your list of games when it was like the least important for sound design, you didn't have any like music rhythm games on there?
Those would be very important. They're kind of, Geometry Dash is kind of a rhythm game because the level design is based on the speed of the music. So a lot of the taps on the screen to go through the levels is based on the music. Really, it doesn't really matter which music is in there as long as it matches the BPM. So I don't know if that makes the sound important or not. But I mean, if you played Geometry Dash, you know how much the music slaps. So everybody's helping. Everybody, you hear that one tune from the start of the game, and you're like, oh, it's Geometry Dash. So, like I said, yeah, I'd say rhythm games are very important in terms of what you do. But I don't know if like you would say that the UI sounds in a rhythm game are that important. The rhythm game part is the thing. So it's the main hook. So it's very important.
Please give a round of applause to